It's Friday, July 22nd. Let's talk PlayStation. Yeah, I've been using the PS3 a little bit, so yeah, I got that on in the background. One other caveat, as I'm sure many of you have, if you've been watching for a while, you've noticed this sometimes, and I'll mention it just to be sure. I bit my tongue this past week, which I do this quite frequently because I got this one really sharp tooth. So sometimes I get it really bad, so I have to talk in a way that makes me sound a little bit stupid, but basically makes it not super painful for me. Like, I have a really bad wound on my tongue. It's like ridiculous. This happens all the time. Next time I see a dentist, I have to get this tooth shaved because it like keeps happening a lot. And every time I go to the dentist, I forget to bring it up. Anyway, we still have PlayStation stuff to talk about. So let's talk about something really unusual, but also kind of cool. Retro City Rampage DX is getting released for PlayStation Portable. That's right, PSP is getting a brand new game. Now, of course, Retro City Rampage, old game, but it is getting a PSP port. Basically, the story there is the developer of the game, originally when making Retro City Rampage, was working on an actual PSP version until he, decided to just do a PS Vita version instead, which is, of course, the game came out on PS Vita, PS3, PS4. But the developer decided to go back to the game and actually, go back to those assets he already had made for the game and just say, hey, screw it, just release it on PSP instead as well. And so this is like the first game ever, I believe, that has four platform cross-buy. So if you buy this game once, you've got it on PSP, PS4, PS Vita, and PS3. If you already own this game, you can download it on PSP. If you don't have this game, you can buy it for PSP if that's for some reason your thing. Because, of course, here's the thing. PSP, of course, very old platform. UMDs are not being made for PSP anymore. The PlayStation Store is no longer live for PSP. So the only way to actually get this game onto your PSP is by PC or using a PlayStation 3 and transferring it via USB. So, or using the download list in the PlayStation Store. So that's actually, I just found that really interesting. This is probably like the last PSP game that'll ever get actually released. But it's not often you see that. So one thing people don't know about PlayStation VR is that it is actually compatible with every single game available on PlayStation 4, including watching Netflix and Hulu and things. Of course, the only thing there is that it's not going to be true virtual reality. Basically, the full compatibility means that you can basically play the game in a theater type mode. So even though you can play every single game on PSVR, you're more or less, it's more or less making a fake theater for you. And so Sony gave us a few details about how that mode is going to work. So they said there's actually like 3 viewing sizes you can do it in: small, medium, large. Small and medium kind of gives you that theater room effect where it looks like you're just playing the game in a virtual theater. Large apparently simulates it to make it seem like you're playing the game on a 226-inch screen, which is certainly very interesting. But yes, you can also do this basically with anything, any game. Also, you can just watch TV or whatever with it, which is, I think of one feature that's very undermined because, of course, when PlayStation VR comes out, there's not going to be a lot of games available for it. Even though 50 games at launch is quite good, you're not going to buy all 50 games probably. And plus, people have different tastes, so it's good to know that if you're going to be getting PlayStation VR, you'll at least have a lot of other uses for it, and you can kind of toy around with stuff to see if you enjoy, say, the theater mode and try all your currently downloaded games and let's watch a TV show or two and see if it actually kind of works for you. That's what I'm wondering is like, how is this, like, is it going to be like really suitable? Because it's cool that it's there, but I feel like this is also one of those things where kind of maybe what might be a useless feature, like to play a game in a virtual theater. Like I don't know if that really sounds ideal, but we'll figure it out once we actually get to play it for ourselves. So if you remember a few months ago, the developer of Rocket League said that they were working on PS4 and Xbox One cross-network play, and they basically said it was feasible. Now they're saying that they're pretty much done. They can actually do this. It would only take a matter of a business day to release a patch and actually have full-on cross-network play between PS4 and X1. The only problem is they're waiting for Sony's approval to do so. So they're pretty much saying, we're done, we can get it ready in a day, we just need Sony to say, yes, go ahead and do it. Because Microsoft has already been pretty open and saying, yeah, go ahead, do it, we don't care. Microsoft was pretty much all for the idea, and Sony really didn't have much of any comment about it, basically saying like, oh, we... more or less one of those PR answers where it's like, we evaluate all ideas and blah, 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 we're an open company or whatever. So Sony actually hasn't given a firm answer on this. And that's another thing that the developer was saying. They're like, oh, well, we are pretty sure Sony will say yes, but it's one of those things where, especially with Sony is a very long process with evaluating like patches and evaluating certain ramifications of what a developer tries to do with their platform. So sometimes it's a really long, like overly complicated process sometimes for Sony to approve these things, and certainly something like this, I think Sony would want to look at a little more concretely to make sure that it's something they want to do. It might be one of those things where it might not even be in Sony's best interest to allow this, but at the same time, it's like, what harm can this really do? And that's what most people are kind of saying, is like, what harm can this really do? Because if anything, this would kind of set a good precedent for future games and future developers that maybe want to incorporate this in their games. And it's overall definitely like a consumer-friendly thing to allow people to play, cross-platform. Not, it doesn't make it one of those situations where you can't play with your friend who bought the game on a different platform. So it's certainly something people want. Just a matter of waiting for Sony to say yes. And I think they will at some point. It's just like, I bet it will be one of those scenarios where they're not going to say yes right away. It'll probably take them a little bit for this to finally get done. So for the hell of it, let's talk about a game that's over a year old, and it's finally coming to PlayStation 4. Rise of the Tomb Raider. Of course, Rise of the Tomb Raider was very controversial last year because it was a timed exclusive for Xbox One, and for the longest time, Microsoft wouldn't necessarily say it was a timed exclusive. Neither would Square Enix. They would say, oh, holiday 2015 or whatever is when the game's coming out, but they wouldn't just straight up say it's only for Xbox One. It took a few months. They were like, yeah, it's kind of coming to PS4. This past week, there was a lot of rumors up until the actual confirmed release, so it's coming out October 11th for PlayStation 4. As usual in most of these cases of an older game getting re-released, the game is going to have all the DLC. The PS4 version is going to have an exclusive, I believe it's not an exclusive mission, but it's going to have PSVR support, which would be an exclusive feature. But yeah, it's like the 20th, it's called Rise of the Tomb Raider 20th anniversary, something like that. October 11th, excuse me. I feel like a lot of people, that's the tough thing about this game, is that when it came out last year, alienated a lot of people. Obviously, timed exclusivity is like one of the biggest sort of like bullshit moves for any sort of hardware manufacturer to do. It's even annoying when Sony doesn't. Sony doesn't do it that often, hardly ever. But when they do it, it's annoying for everybody because it's still going to come to your platform, but it's like you got to wait this long, and then you kind of lose interest, and the game finally comes out, but it's still full price, and you can get it cheaper on the other platform, and it's like, what the hell? But technically, it's kind of still a good deal because they bundle in all the old content. But when they did this, I'm sure Square Enix kind of regrets it. I'm sure Microsoft doesn't necessarily care, but they were also kind of upset because the game had pretty soft sales when it came out. Understandably so, because last year when this game came out, it was coming out against Fallout 4 and every other major game that was released within that holiday 2015 time period. So certainly the game needs a nice bump on PS4, and if it's going to get it, I'm sure it would. I'm sure Sony would certainly be laughing if this game came out on PS4 and like just right away crushed, say, the sales on Xbox One. And certainly that would tell Square Enix to not do anything like that ever again. But and that's the thing. This is something Microsoft loves to do. Microsoft is the manufacturer that loves to do timed exclusivity all the time. They do it way more than Sony does. But maybe they'll get into a place now where they'll stop doing that. I mean, it's like timed exclusivity is like one of those situations where a lot of the times it really just does not make a whole lot of sense for most parties, and especially for the consumer. So hopefully it'll be made an example of. But yeah, that game's coming out if you do still care about it. And then you should, because it actually is a good game. It definitively is a very good game. You're obviously not allowed to like it if you want, but a lot of people did enjoy this game. It's a good game, and it certainly deserves some time if you have the cash or if you want to wait for a sale or something. And for our final news story, let's talk about some console sales. MPD gave us some interesting data, the data being that console sales are down in June 2016 by 43% compared to June 2015 last year, that same period. So down 43%, but at the same time, PS4 and Xbox One are still selling at a faster rate than Xbox 360 and PS3 did within their same sort of time frame of the lead-up life cycle. They're actually 40% better than PS3 and 360. So, despite them being faster than PS4 360, they're technically down this year from their previous year of PS4 and X1. And so, I don't know, it's not really like major news. I mean, it's kind of not necessarily surprising. There's not really a lot of big titles going on right now. Everything's like pretty much squared up right in the fall or holiday for this year. So it makes sense that it's down. I guess the one interesting anecdote I wanted to mention is like, because you know, you see something like this, right, where it's like, oh, you know, PS4 and X1 sales are down. And for the longest time, there's always been this conversation among people where it's like, consoles are going to die, blah, 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 or like consoles are, you know, slowly, you know, not as relevant anymore or something like that. And then the rebuttal there is always, what are you talking about? They're always, you know, consoles are very much so still alive, especially since they're doing considerably better than PS3 and X1. And this has always been sort of an interesting contention because PC nowadays is on the rise, and it's getting even better and better, and a lot of people are flocking to PC, and understandably so. PC is a great platform to play on, but that's the thing. Because PC is doing so well, it's just, for a lot of people, that doesn't make sense now to buy PS4 and X1. And you see something like this where it's like the sales are going down for PS4, X1, you think, that's why, blah, blah, they don't make sense anymore, but they're still doing better than PS3 and Xbox 360. And the major point to take away from all this is that you got PS4 and X1 doing better than PS3 360, and you got PC going way up. And back then, during PS3 and 360, PC was doing that was one of the PC, like the PC platform, like, that was one of their all-time lows was when PS3 and 360 came out, because that was during that time period. PS3 and 360 had an incredibly good power-to-price ratio. Games looked considerably better on PS3 and 360 for the money you were spending. They, you know, ran considerably better, at least on 360 most of the time, compared to PC. PC development was just like, it was just one of those things where it was at an all-time low. Games didn't run nearly as well. You just needed a lot of money to get a even decently comparable rig back then. So, what to take away from all this is that neither of these are down. It's just a lot of more gamers have entered the space. Not only is PC up, but PS4 and X1 are up. So it's not even like a major talking point. It's just one of those things where so many gamers nowadays have entered the space of enjoying games, and more importantly, gaming being a more culturally accepted thing. And I think that's one thing a lot of people don't seem to recognize anymore, and people still kind of throw away this conversation of you know, gamers are nerds, this and that, you know, the sort of prejudice that's always been like kind of around for the last, like, you know, who knows, like 20, 30 years when it comes to playing video games. But it's like, that's not the case anymore. Like, this is 2016. A lot of people nowadays are forward thinking, and more importantly, it's like very culturally accepted to play games now. Games make so much money, so many people play video games, and it's like, it's gotten to the point today where it's like, if you don't play games, it's almost like, oh, you don't play games, that's weird, but all right, you know. It's like, it's almost like, oh, you don't play video games? Oh, all right, well, I love games, because everybody plays video games now. Because we got new generations being birthed, and you know, the previous generation is now becoming the new generation of lawyers, doctors, senators. You know, the kind of people that grew up playing PlayStation 1, N64, NES, and they're still playing today. So yeah, there's not really a major talking point to have from this, other than the fact that, like, consoles aren't down, PC certainly isn't down, more and more people are playing games, and that's a good thing. Those are just some of the news stories I want to talk about to you guys this week. The Random Gaming topic was about irrational gamers. We all know these people. We all know them. Like I just mentioned, there's a lot of gamers nowadays, and absolutely, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The kind of people that take this shit way too seriously. So we have a conversation about that and why those people kind of suck ass. But why are they so irrational and crazy? And then everything else is going very well. I don't have much else to update you guys on, other than, like, I don't know, I guess, well, one thing I've always been, I wanted to ask the past 2 weeks on LTPS, but I forgot to, is what are people playing? Because there isn't really a whole lot going on right now, unless you're, like, one of the, you know, how many other millions of people that are playing, like, Pokemon Go on your phone. What are people actually playing? I Am Setsuna just came out, and I really want to download that. I just need to find the time to play games nowadays, because I'm still working a lot, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are, and I know a lot of you guys are, like, getting ready to go to school soon again in the fall, so you're not going to have as much time, which sucks, because, like, that's when a lot of great stuff's coming out. But let me know what you guys are playing. I want some suggestions for myself, and hopefully I'll try and find some time to actually play something. Anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys next... That made a fart noise. You hear that shit? I'll see you guys next Friday. I wonder if that's going to come up in the audio. Who am I kidding? Everything comes up in the audio.